This evening, we are going to have a moment of silence in memory of Tammy Conrad, the Daniel Boone Teacher of the Year, who passed away last week after her battle with cancer. Thank you. Board, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Ferguson, seconded by Mr. Lang. By roll call?
Ms. Walker?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. First on our agenda now is recognitions. Mr. Dykeman.
Thank you, Mrs. Scope. The annual U.S. News & World Report Best High School rankings were released last month, and 2 high schools in the Francis Howell School District again made the prestigious list of the best high schools in the state. Francis Howell High School and Francis Howell Central High School are both ranked in the top 20 in Missouri. Howell was ranked number 10 and Central number 17, both improving their ranking over the previous year. Howell, Central, and Francis Howell North all scored well above the state average in math and English proficiency, as well as college readiness. U.S. News Comprehensive Rankings methodology is based on the key principles that a great high school must serve all of its students, and not just those who are college bound, and that it must be able to produce measurable academic outcomes to show the school is successfully educating its student body across a wide range of performance indicators. With us tonight are Howell Principal Dr. Dave Wedlock and Central Principal Dr. Sonny Arnell. Gentlemen, please come up and introduce your representatives that helped help you earn this achievement.
Okay, my name is Dave Whitlock, Principal of Francis Howell High School, and I will begin with Mr. Hamming Lynn. He is a class of 17 graduate. He is a Math Department Award winner. Excelled in several math classes, AP classes. He's involved in robotics. He was part of the Boeing Challenge team that did aerospace design on trying to get their plane to fly across the gym the farthest. And just as a bonus, he was also our prom king. Joining him is Shelby Odell, who is our Com Arts Department Award winner. I chose these 2 students because math and Com Arts are 2 of the preeminent measures in the award tonight. She is our yearbook and newspaper editor. She's involved in several AP classes, excelled in many English classes, and is also a state champion dancer. And then finally we have Dr. Angie Kozlowski, who is our associate principal.
She's also the golden girl from the zoo.
That's correct. Thank you for interjecting, Dr. Arnell. So, and then we also have Dr. Angie Kozlowski, who is, like me, a 20-year employee of the district, who has served in a variety of roles as an English teacher, a coach, and now associate principal at Francis Howell, involved in all things academic, spurring the highest student achievement possible. So I appreciate all of these students and staff members as we represent the 1,800 students and 150 staff members at Francis Howell High School that their performance achieved this award.
I would like to thank the board and Central Office Administration and all the community members that allow us to be recognized tonight. I know all the work that you all lead out and help support us to support and serve our community. The recognition we were able to achieve through the hard work of our students and staff would never happen without an incredible board, without incredible central office support, and a great community to live within and serve. So we're at a great place, and it's nice every once in a while to stop and recognize that. I always feel you can be lucky to your results, or you can lead to your results, and I want to believe as a district we lead to our results. But I have some great people that do all that for me, so I can just cheer them on. And they're here tonight. I have Angie Siren, who's our Dean of Students, who's been a teacher, a coach, and now a dean of students at Howell Central. She worked in the district as a content leader. I have Brian Warner, who's attending tonight. He's been a teacher, a dean, an assistant principal, a coach, so he knows our community super. He works with our social studies department. And then I have Mrs. Marty Davis, who's been at Howell Central for 19 years. Awesome, and she works with our business departments, our world language departments, our fine arts departments. And Mr. Dave Stouffer, he works with our special services department, and he's been at Central now 9 years? 14! 14. Time flies when you're having fun. Mrs. Odell didn't know that she was going to be here tonight for this reason, but she's also one of our awesome English teachers. She teaches our sophomore honors courses, and so she's here. And the only bad thing about her being here is that I try to talk her into bringing her daughter to Central, but she never would do it. So that would be really good if we'd had both of you. That's right. And Mrs. Fawcett's here. Her son was a graduate last year, and another one in a couple of years. So we have a neat opportunity to really recognize all our community members. So with that, thanks so much for letting us be here tonight to be recognized for doing what we love to do, and that's serve our community and actually have some great results through our students' accomplishments. So thank you, guys.
Kind of turn out a date. We'll see if we slide in kind of behind each other. I know they're way too crowded.
And to tell you about our final item on the recognition agenda, I'd like to introduce Orchard Farm Board Member and MSBA Region 7 Delegate, Mr. Kenny Bierman.
Well, I'm here to present Board Member Lang with a plaque for his achievement as an advanced board member with the Missouri School Board Association, and it takes a lot to get this award. And I've known Chad a long time, and I've known most of your board a long time, and they're wonderful people. And Chad's a good, hard-working, children-centered gentleman, and I'm very proud to give him this award. I didn't really have a speech ready for this, but I think the world of Chad. The funny thing is, when I was at the Lake of the Ozarks and Chad couldn't be there, and they said, "Well, do you want your picture taken?" When I don't look like Chad at all, so I'd like Chad to come down and get his award, and I hope he advances his studies and gets the master's in due time. Thank you, Chad. Thank you.
You want to get a number one picture?
Chad, you want to stand
Come on,
up?
come on, right there.
Come on, Chad.
Come on, Chad.
Mary, you should go.
Mr. Bierman gets to work with our good friend Dr. Tom Muzzy at Orchard Farm, so we know he's a kind and patient man.
I got
That concludes recognition. Thank you, Mrs. Cope.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Thanks for hanging around for a while. Good to see you. Good to see you, Michelle.
Thank you. entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Ferguson, seconded by Mrs. Walker. By roll call.
Mr. Lane,
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. MSBA board report.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Missouri School Boards Association's board report for the month of June. We thank you for the opportunity to share some news and information during a few minutes of your board meeting. We begin with a look at potential cuts to the Medicaid program and the impact those cuts might have on our schools. The U.S. House of Representatives has passed and sent to the Senate a health care bill that will result in significant cuts to public schools. The bill would change the way public schools receive Medicaid funds necessary to provide services to students with disabilities. Public schools throughout the nation receive about $4 billion a year in Medicaid funding. Schools in Missouri receive about $20 million a year from what's called School District Administrative Claiming under Medicaid. MSBA Associate Executive Director for Student Services, Dr. Kim Ratcliffe, says cutting Medicaid funds would undermine the ability of public schools to meet the educational needs of students with disabilities. She says most people, including lawmakers, don't realize the extent of medical services being provided to students at school.
We provide one-on-one nurses, personal care attendants, we catheterize, we tube feed, we suction. We have children who've come on total life support to school. And so in order for us to be able to educate those children, these services need to be in place. And the provision that we've been given in the past has been that Medicaid dollars can be used to cover the medical cost of otherwise eligible children. And that's being threatened. If we lose that money, every public school within the state is going to feel the impact.
Ratcliffe oversees MSBA's Medicaid Consortium, a program that helps schools get the reimbursement to which they are entitled for providing services to students with disabilities. President Trump's proposed federal budget also calls for major cuts to Medicaid that would have an impact on local school district budgets. MSBA is sponsoring a visit to Washington, D.C. soon. It's an opportunity for board members to meet with members of our congressional delegation to discuss federal education issues that are important to public schools, including the Medicaid issue. That trip is scheduled for June 27th through 29th. Check the MSBA website for details if you're interested in making that trip to Washington, D.C. The 2017 regular session of the Missouri General Assembly has adjourned. The session was notable for issues that did not pass as much as for bills that did pass. Among those bills that did not pass was Senate Bill 313, the tax credit voucher bill that contained numerous other provisions, including accreditation by school building rather than by school district. MSBA strongly opposed the bill since it would have provided taxpayer money to private schools that are not accountable to the public. MSBA Associate Executive Director for Advocacy, Mike Reed, says board members who contacted their legislators on the issue made a difference.
Membership getting in and saying that this is not good for our local districts. It was not good for the kids in the state of Missouri. This is again, it's a voucher bill without any overlooking and overseeing exactly to make sure that the money is spent wisely. But that being said, we will see those bills again, perhaps shortly.
Another bill opposed by MSBA that did not pass would have expanded charter schools in the state. Legislators did approve a $48 million increase in the foundation formula funding, meaning the formula is fully funded under current law. While that's good news, Reed says school districts may not necessarily receive the full amount of state funding in the coming fiscal year due to the state's uncertain revenue picture. Registration for the 2017 MSBA Annual Conference in cooperation with the Missouri Association of School Administrators opens this month. This year's event is scheduled for October 5th through the 8th at the Lake of the Ozarks. We'll have another outstanding lineup of keynote speakers this year, including award-winning journalist Stone Phillips, who happens to be a Missouri Public School graduate, and Michelle Gay, the co-founder and executive director of Safe and Sound, a Sandy Hook initiative. The event also features more than 100 breakout sessions, all designed to improve the leadership skills of school board members and administrators. You can register for the annual conference on the MSBA website. That's it for this month's edition of the MSBA Board Report. Thanks for allowing us to have some time at your board meeting, and so long from Columbia.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is fiscal responsibility. Board, we have a second reading and adoption of our budget in front of us. We have a work session and a preliminary review of the preliminary budget. So I will entertain a motion to approve the 2017-18 preliminary budget as presented.
So moved.
Second. Motion made by Mr. Lane, second by Mrs. Ferguson. By roll call?
Ms. Ferguson?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-1. Next on the agenda is the insurance plan changes and premium contribution recommendation. Board, I will entertain a motion to approve the insurance plan changes and premium contribution rates for the 2017-18 plan year as presented.
So moved.
Second. Motion made by Mr. Lane, seconded by Mrs. Ferguson. Discussion. Mrs. Ferguson?
Yeah, I wanted to let it be known. I've had a few comments from different patrons who look at our videos and that of our board meetings, and they seem lost that we're not getting our questions or what answered. So I just wanted to reiterate that before a board meeting, it's time for the board, we talk to each other, call each other, we talk to Kevin, we email, and we get all of our questions answered so that when we get up here, we're informed board members to make an informed decision. And I just wanted to let everybody know that, and that way if they're watching the tape, they'll hear it.
Mr. Ray?
Yeah, the insurance plan, this is something that we've done for a number of years, and I've always had concerns for it, and expressed those concerns in past years, but I believe this year is a little different than other years because this is one of the years when we're not going to have, or potentially we're not going to have a balanced budget. In previous years, like earlier this year, we went through negotiations with our staff, and we basically took the position that we have no additional funds that we could allocate to our staff, and that's what we went through. And we granted some days off and some additional vacation days to our staff members in lieu of additional monetary compensation. Several months fast forward several months later, we as a board get a proposal from the insurance plan, and the insurance plan says that they would like an additional, in excess of $1 million to be contributed to the employee benefit funds. Now, I am not opposed to that in general, but typically that would be something that, as a board member, I don't believe the committee has the authority to say we're going to spend $1 million, nor does any one individual. That's only something that the board can do. And this is presented to the board 2 weeks prior to this meeting, and then in 2 weeks we're supposed to make the determination on whether or not to approve this or not approve this. It's basically an unnegotiated benefit for our staff. It's the way it's been done for a number of years. However, giving us 2 weeks to make a decision, and then basically there is no decision to be made because it's too late to make any other changes in that, I don't believe is a good option, and I believe the process is flawed and we need to change the process. So however that needs to be done, whether, you know, a portion is allocated during negotiations, if they're moved closer together or something needs to be done so that it's more transparent and the board is informed as opposed to being surprised 2 weeks before we have to make a decision without any recourse. So that's why I'll be voting no on this issue.
Mrs. Coe.
Mr. Sullivan.
I'd like to share just a couple points. First of all, the board does have a policy that was negotiated that requires that the board contribution be sufficient to fund the base plan plus a low dental plus vision. And so if you take a look at it, if you take the whole number, that's probably not a fair estimate, because some amount of money has to be put into the plan to meet what's already agreed to and in board policy. The other thing that I would say is that I have been very conscious about providing the board quarterly updates about how our insurance plan is operating. Our plan year begins October 1. We are doing our very best to make estimates about what our costs are going to be, but we're projecting out at this point 18 months. If we do that any sooner, it becomes pretty much meaningless to do it given the nature of the market. So while I appreciate Mr. Haynes' perspective, I think it would be unfair for people listening to this meeting or people who are in attendance tonight to think that this was somehow rushed through without opportunity for proper consideration. Again, quarterly updates have been provided to the board about the status of our plan. You could infer from the information provided that there was going to be an increased cost to providing insurance to our employees in the coming year. The decisions that were made have been a course of conversations that began in January of this year. And yes, the first meeting in June is a culmination when the board has the first opportunity to see that. And by necessity, in order to get all of the pieces in place and moving so that we can get information out to our employees for the open enrollment period that begins in early August, so that we can start the plan effectively on October 1, according to our plan year. That is the timeline. And I think there are probably some changes that we can make to the process to give the board better confidence about the overall expenditures. I just don't like the characterization that administration has somehow rushed this through without any opportunity for the board to understand the implications. I think we spent a considerable amount of time 2 weeks ago talking about all the aspects of it.
And Mr. Supple, there's a committee that helps review all of the proposals, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And do you have help from a consultant?
We do.
Correct?
Yes.
And then how many hours do you think that committee spent reviewing the proposals and coming up with a recommendation?
Well, the committee has probably spent, we met 5 times, so several hours each time. But outside of that, the consultant and Mrs. Murray, our benefits manager, and myself have spent many hours in addition to that preparing information for those meetings and trying to make our meeting time with the committee members as efficient as possible.
And if we are self-funded in our formula,
That's
in our
correct.
insurance coverage, correct? So if that would be depleted completely, it defeats the purpose of being self-funded if there's no funding?
Correct, yes.
Ms. Ferguson?
Kevin, how can we go about providing a little more information to each board member? Would it be best if we approached it, or I know we did a work session, but maybe it should be just one work session just on insurance with maybe the committee that can tie up loose ends or explain a little bit more? Would that be doable, or?
We'd be happy to do whatever the board thinks would be most helpful.
So, I want to be able to understand just about, in minute detail on how all of that is and how that all fits together. Because if you have just one piece and don't have the other pieces, then you don't see how it all goes together.
Sure.
The other thing that I'm concerned about is part of the conversation was about, for the first time, not having a balanced budget. This will be the first time that I've been on the board that we're going to come in with a balanced budget.
First of all, I never said that it was a rush decision. If I implied that, I apologize, because I understand the committee spends a lot of time and effort into making these decisions. My point was that the board did not receive, we received updates when it's where the plan is, but until the committee has their final meeting and decides the policy, any changes or lack of changes thereof, that number is not set. And so the first time the board sees the set number and the results of the committee is the first meeting, and then 2 weeks later we're asked to approve that. That was my point. I did not mean, I wasn't implying that the committee didn't do their due diligence. I wasn't implying that the committee doesn't put forth a lot of effort into it. What I'm saying is quarterly updates are nice, but until this committee brings forth the recommendation, the quarterly, we don't have an idea of what that number is until they actually sit down and decide the benefits and stuff. That's what I've been trying to characterize and bring forward. I wasn't implying that it was a rush to decision on their behalf. I was implying that the board is rushed in a decision, that we have to make that determination in 2 weeks.
Ms. Walker.
So I've got a concern that we have another item on the agenda tonight where we're going to go and ask the parents to contribute to our budget, $250,000, and we're going to put $1 million additional into the employee benefits. And I'm concerned with what is the message we're sending to our families. I'm concerned with it. And I'm not an insurance expert, and so I think it would be beneficial in the future if we could dumb it down a bit, maybe, because I know there were a lot of questions that were asked before the meeting because we don't exactly understand all the differences. So it was explained to me that it's not really an additional $1 million in benefit, that it's actually putting the money into our reserve so that we don't have to do that later. Is that correct, how I understand it?
The structure works by the board making a contribution for every member who participates in the plan, every employee who participates in the plan. The board makes a contribution on their behalf, and that contribution goes into our reserve account, which pays the administrative costs and the actual claims. And so our premiums are calculated in order to drive that board contribution to our reserve account, so it's available to pay the administrative costs. And we have a third-party administrator who adjudicates all the claims. So the doctor's office sends in a bill, they compare it against our plan design, they collect any copay or co-insurance that might be applicable, they apply the network discount that is appropriate, and then they either send an explanation of benefit with amount due to the employee, or they pay the balance on our behalf. And so there's that administrative piece that needs to be done, and then the actual cost of the claims. And that's what that reserve account is there for, in order to meet on a regular basis the ongoing operational costs of the medical plan.
So I think I respect that we have a lot of people that maybe aren't as familiar with insurance, and we can maybe do something to help with that for the future. With our consultant, or Kevin, do you think in the future we could find some time for the board to have a tutorial on health insurance, how it comes together, how self-funding works, what our options are for our employees? Maybe it will help everybody be a little more comfortable in the decisions forward.
We'd be happy to do that. And we don't have to wait until next June. We can find an appropriate time when the board would like, and we'd be happy to do it. We already do some of that with our insurance committee at the beginning of each year to kind of help them understand how the various pieces fit together and work.
I think that helps everybody just be more comfortable under decision-making capabilities.
I want to address the other part of your concern, and that is that we're going to be talking about an activity fee in a little while, and we are also talking about supporting our employees through this insurance increase. And if you look at Kevin's projections for the next 5 years in that document that is attached to the budget item tonight. You can see that there is, for the next 5 years, there is no addition to the salaries, but the one big rock that he did put in there in future projections is an increase in the benefits. And we don't know how that's gonna turn out. We never know what that increase in benefits is gonna be, which is part of why this is so complex and the timing is so difficult. But the one thing that Kevin did figure in is that we would be at least able to protect that part of what we're providing for our employees in the next few years. And as Mr. Haynes said, that has always been part of assumptions that we have all made throughout the course of time. And we are in different times, but I believe that to be one big rock that we are going to try to maintain for our employees. So as salaries remain stagnant, that insurance doesn't mean that our employees are bringing home less as they're trying to insure their families. It happens that those two items happen to be on the agenda tonight, but we also, we've made other cuts in other areas, and we are, if you look out in those 5 years projections, what we have going right now is not sustainable without other things happening in the next few years, either increases in revenue or additional cuts. And so we have to look at all of those alternative funding sources, no matter what they are, including that activity fee, in my opinion.
Board, any other discussion? By roll call.
Mr. Lang?
Aye.
Nay.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion carries 6-1. Monthly financial report. Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the May 2017 financial statements as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mr. Lane. Mr. Supple.
Thanks, Mrs. Cope. I would just like to call attention to the very last page of the memo. I've just updated the forecast projection for this current fiscal year, and just showing you that we expect our revenue to be about 1% greater than what was estimated in the revised budget that we did in November, and then our expenditures are about 1% less than what we estimated in the revised budget. So that 2% swing is actually going to bring us to about $1.7 million of revenue over expense for the fiscal year 17 budget. So that's a little bit of an update from when we had our last conversation with the board at the work session in May when we talked about the budget. So those, we've just got 1 month left to project, and so if June 2017 resembles what happened in June 2016, I feel pretty comfortable that this is where we'll end up for the year. So I just wanted to share that with the board. It's a little change from what we shared with you previously.
Thank you, Mr. Supple. Any discussion? By roll call.
Mr. Haynes?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Or next on the agenda is purchases over $7,500. I'll entertain a motion to approve the purchases over $7,500 as presented.
So moved.
Second. Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mrs. Ferguson. Discussion.
I'd like to pull an item.
Which item would you like to read?
Item number 13. I'm going to pull it to discuss it.
Just to discuss. And we'll approve everything else.
Okay, yeah.
Mr. Nate?
I'm sorry. I'd like to pull items 11 and 17. Right.
So board, I believe it would be an amended motion to approve the purchases over 7,500 minus item 11, 13, and 17.
I'll amend my motion.
And a second? Second by Mrs. Ferguson. More discussion? By roll call.
Mrs. Lang?
Aye.
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 Amended motion passes 7-0. Board will entertain a motion to approve item number 11.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mr. Haynes. Discussion?
Yes, I had the question, the reason that I pulled this and for clarification is this is just a line and would be the preferred vendor for the 17-18 school year, but there's a $20,000 line item associated with that. Is that typical? I mean, typically we approve preferred vendors, but there's no money allocated at the time that we approve preferred vendors.
Frederick Roofing was approved as a preferred vendor last year. And so what this is a blanket purchase order to Frederick Roofing to allow us to proceed expeditiously with repair of minor roof leaks and so forth as they crop up during the year. So the detail that was attached shows that last year we had them approved for 16-17, 17-18, and 18-19. So this isn't an approval of a preferred vendor that's taken place already. This is a blanket purchase order to Frederick, much like we did a blanket purchase order, I believe at the last meeting, to cooperating school districts for the purchase of custodial chemicals and supplies. So that's what this is. We will occasionally have small jobs that come up, and we'd like to just be able to move kind of quickly to get those done, and this just gives us an opportunity to deal with those small roofing projects as they arise.
Mrs. Ferguson?
Just a question, Kevin. So when they do come up and we say we approve this, does the board still then get that on this agenda, that we see that come through? Or? No.
So
Okay, so it's just for the smaller items?
anything that is paid under this purchase order will
Okay.
show up in the accounts payable,
Accounts payable, all right.
but won't come back as an individual approval.
Okay.
So you've approved this $20,000. So there may be an $8,000 roofing job that gets done, but it'll be paid under this $20,000, which has already been approved. So it will show up in the payables, but not come back as another purchase over $7,500.
Any other discussion? By roll call.
Ms. Walker?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve item number 13 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mr. Haynes. Mr. Lang?
Okay, I just pulled this item just for, kind of like Sandy said earlier, with getting a little clarification out in the open more than what we communicate behind the scenes. Just for clarification, can you explain again what you explained to me in our email correspondence to the reasoning as why, if we voted last year to approve a 2-year contract extension with First Student, why we're voting on it again this year? The exact same thing this year, really.
In September of 2016, the board approved a 2-year extension of our agreement with First Student, and the route rates were the main factor at that time. We've subsequently finalized the contract language, and so one of the differences in the contract language is that if we contract our transportation services by more than 5%, First Student has an opportunity to renegotiate the route rates. And so that is reflected, that contract language was not available in September. We worked on that after the board's approval. And so it is a reiteration of the agreement that we did in September, and then you get to see now the final contract language associated with that.
Okay, I just have one more thing. Do you see this affecting in any way, by voting on this ahead, what if any possible recommendations that the transportation committee might come forward to the board with?
No, actually I think it'll be helpful to us because it'll give us some better parameters to understand the full impact of decisions that we're making. So if you, absent understanding what first student may or may not do, you might make a decision thinking you're going to save X amount of dollars, and you won't actually save all of that because there may be some increased route rates associated with it. So I think it would help in our decision making. I don't think it'd be a hindrance.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Walker? So we're going to review the busing again next year then? After this school year, it will come up again?
Every contract that the board enters into, even those that have multi-years associated with them, are brought back to the board for renewal because by state law, this board can't obligate a future board. So there will be potentially a different set of 7 people sitting at this dais next year. And so all of our multi-year contracts, like Sodexo, like First Student, any of, you know, at the last board meeting, we had a series of preferred vendors where those contracts were renewed. So as a matter of practice, all of our contracts are brought back to the board for renewal on an annual basis in order to be in compliance with state law.
But that's so, when we review this a year from now, we would potentially be reviewing additional bus services, and that would be the appropriate time to have that conversation?
If we were going to be, if I understand your question, that if the district is going to be making a recommendation to do something different with transportation services, the time to do that would be sometime in the fall, so that would be factored in. It has less to do with this aspect of it than planning out methodically what our transportation services are going to be for the next school year. So to have that conversation at this time would not be helpful because we're too close to the beginning of the next school year to effectively make those changes. So if we're going to be talking about changes to our transportation services, those need to take place sometime in the late summer, early fall, so that we have time to effectively plan and communicate whatever those changes might be. But they would be covered under this overall contract, which would be brought back next year as a renewal. We're now approving the second year of a 2-year agreement.
So assuming that if there were adjustments, we are still fine with this contract?
Yes.
But after this year, after this school year, then we are open to look at other providers, other options. We're not, this is for just the 1 year. This is the second year of a 2-year contract. I just want to make sure I understand.
There are provisions within the contract that allow the board to give notice to first student if we wanted to do something completely different.
Do we know when we're going to hear from, I mean, I'm on the task force, but do we know when we're going to have any sort of answers?
Sure. We got some good direction at our last meeting, which was just earlier this week, and representatives from First Student, along with Mr. Butler and myself, have some homework that we need to do, and we'll be gathering that information. So time framework, I can't give you an exact time framework. We did say to the committee when we met that we would try to schedule a conversation with the board potentially in August where we could share some of the work that we're doing. So if I had to make a guess, I would say that would be the time framework that we're looking at. Sometime between now and the end of July, we will have information to share with the committee members about the potential opportunities that exist for us, and then that committee can make some determination what recommendation they may want to make to the board. And then, much as Mrs. Simpkins did last time with the extracurricular proposal, we would have a work session with the board so we could talk about the implications of the recommendations that are being brought forward, and then we bring it back for further consideration by the board. So sometime in the late summer, early part of the fall, we would be bringing those recommendations first a work session and then for approval.
Okay, so say something was discovered within that. Approving this contract gives us about a, what? $450,000 leeway before they have to renegotiate their rates, rent rates? If we're doing more than 5%? If anything were to, if the task force was to find something that we could in effect make do within the spring, this contract gives us that leeway?
Yes, that might be a fair way to think of it.
Okay.
Yes.
And it is 1 year, we can renegotiate?
Correct. And just
Just
be
to
clear.
reiterate what you just said.
So we have, for example, we have a 3-year contract for our audit services. I believe the expectation is, going into it, that you're going to remain with that service provider for the full 3 years, unless you become dissatisfied with the service that they're providing. But as a matter of course, we bring those renewals to the board. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so it's a 1-year agreement, but the intent is that we would use the 2 years, but we have the option to cancel if we decide to do something different.
Right, I guess I'm more the number aspect. I'm not saying you leave it for a student, it's just more the number.
Right.
So I think the questions fall into 2 categories. When can we go back out for rebid and look at an entirely new company if that's what the board decides to do? And the natural time for that at the end of the 2-year contract would be?
Probably August of 2018.
And the other part of the question that I think the board is asking is, if the Transportation Task Force finds some significant reductions, where does that leave us with this contract? And I think that that's the last question you asked in regard to the $450,000 of play before we would have to renegotiate and look at a different number. Is that accurate, Kevin?
Yes.
Okay, so I just, for clarification, I want to make sure that I understand this. August of 18 is when we could go out for bid and look at different services.
That's correct. Because you need to have that lead time. A decision would need to be made probably prior to December, because if you're going to switch it to another company, you've got to give notice to your current provider, and that new provider has to have time to gear up for an operation of this size.
Okay, and then we can save up to $450,000 before we renegotiate. Is that what I understand?
Well, what it says is it would reduce our services by more than 5%. So I think that's a placeholder for that.
Yeah.
Please, I don't want anybody to
No,
use
that
that
was
as a
just
strict
a-
number, and we're going to get it calculated against that. So what the contract says, if services are reduced by more than 5%. So we'd have to take a look at what the recommendations are and how those play out.
Board, any other discussion? Okay, by roll call.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
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 Nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 5-2. Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve item number 17 as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Haynes, seconded by Mrs. Lang. Discussion? Mr. Lang? Wasn't this yours?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, sorry, Mr.
No,
Lang.
you're fine.
I'm sorry.
When you look at this on the surface, it's like a $5 million expenditure, but I've asked Kevin to kind of clarify this and explain it, because I'm going to summarize it, make it real simple. We get reimbursed based on the lunches and stuff, so we actually recover more than this amount of money, but the money has to go into a special fund because it's meals, and meals are regulated by the feds and everything else. Is that like an oversimplification of a very complicated process?
Doesn't sound simple.
That was quick. Okay. Say yes, Kevin.
You're up.
So I don't, I don't think that's completely accurate. We do pay Sodexo $5 million in fees for managing our food service program. And we do generate revenue from sales of our lunches and the reimbursements that we receive from the federal government. And Sodexo has guaranteed us that the program will generate revenue in excess of expenses each year. So I think that's, maybe we're saying the same thing. So Sodexo has guaranteed us by contract that our food service operation will operate on a positive cash flow basis. So we are making money on our food service program every year. But we are definitely, I don't want anybody, we are definitely paying Sodexo $5 million. But you're right, we're generating through sales and reimbursements. They guarantee us that the program operates. They guarantee a return to us.
Board, any other discussion? By roll call.
Ms. Ferguson?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. For next on the agenda is extracurricular task force recommendation. I'll entertain a motion to approve the yearly student activity fee structure as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Lang. Any discussion? Mr. Lang?
Kevin, by approving this ensures that the clubs, sports, all those things will remain the way they are, as far as support with coaches and supplies and needs for those students. Money generated can be put directly back into that programming.
I will defer to Mrs. Simpkins because she chaired this committee.
Sorry, Kevin, thank you.
The revenue that the activity fee will generate will go back to the general fund, which will help the district support their portion of cost for those activities and fees that activities and clubs that we provide for our students. So the district has a cost in providing those programs, whether that is stipends for coaches, and so the activity fee will go back into the general fund that will allow us to continue to do that.
Correct. Thank you.
But I do think, just so that, in all fairness, we are making a commitment that every activity and every staffing level in place on June 15th, 2017 is going to be in place indefinitely. Now, we've made plans for the 17-18 school year. I think we know what's going to happen for that.
Right.
But I don't want the board to think that this means there won't be any changes to any program for which we pay stipends to a coach or a sponsor.
And also there has been a cut in transportation for activities
Correct.
that we discussed.
Mrs. Walker?
So is this a fee that we will vote on every year, or the way that this is it going into place just moving forward, or is it something we'll revisit as each year?
I would expect that the intention is the activity fee would continue each year until directed by the board to stop that fee, so that those services and sports and those activities can continue for students. So if and when revenues were different and the board felt that we didn't need to have the fee, we could bring a proposal to stop that fee at any time. I don't know that it is the intention that the approval would happen every year, but at any time we could consider, and that's what we learned other school districts had done. They continued with that activity fee year after year, and once a tax levy was passed and the financial implications were different, then they didn't feel as if that fee needed to be assessed to families. Then they made a motion to withdraw the fee or to end that program.
Or it might be that even after additional revenues are brought in through a tax levy, that we would continue the activity fee. That it would be something that would help sustain us as we become less dependent on local dollars in the future. So I don't know that we thought of whether or not we're bringing this for an annual approval. I believe we needed to bring this for the first approval because this is a significant change in our practice, and we wanted to make sure the board was supportive of this idea before we moved it forward. So we'll get back to you on that.
Yeah. And how will this impact our low-income families?
I do think that the task force set those fee structures in a place where they felt that it was feasible for families, the $5 fee, the $20 fee, and the $40 fee, and setting those caps at the levels and at the yearly maximums would hopefully make it affordable for all families. We do have that provision that we would want to work with our families who qualify for maybe a free and reduced lunch or indicate that they can't afford to pay that fee, that we would work with them individually. We have learned that districts have done payment plans. We have learned of districts having scholarship funds, and so we can put those sorts of things into place to help those families.
Mr. Mead?
Yeah, I guess I got a couple of points, and we covered some of these in the work session, so it won't be too repetitive, but it says the recommendation, the way the motion is worded, it says the recommendation of the committee. The committee actually provided two options for the board. Option one, which was the first option, would have been, if available, dedicate enough financial resources to the activities budget to continue status quo offering without a fee structure. We've just heard that we're going to have that we are projected to have $1.7 million more than we anticipated for last year. And as you corrected me, we have a balanced budget for next year. And if I'm correct, I'm assuming that our budget as proposed does not include this additional $200,000 or $300,000.
That's correct.
It's not factored in. So I don't believe that there's a necessity to do this at this point in time.
Mrs. Ferguson?
Kevin, I'm sorry, directed to the wrong person again. So, just to clarify everything, so if the fee structure goes in and the activity fee goes in, it doesn't, because I want the public to know that that doesn't mean that the coaches or the personnel are going to get any more money because the parents are paying more. It goes into the general fund to help offset the cost of all of the activities. Is that correct?
Yes, the salaries for our coaches and our sponsors have been frozen for several years, and they are set to be frozen for the 17-18 school year. They've actually been frozen a year longer than our staff, so this would be the third year that our coaches and sponsors have had a salary freeze in the stipends that they receive, and I would share that the stipends that they receive are very minimal to the amount of time and effort that they put into the work that they do for our students. So they will have the third year of a salary freeze for the 17-18 school year.
I think one of my concerns about our budget and our vision going forward, and I think our vision is going to get some more clarity with our strategic planning coming up. But with as many things as we have cut over the last several years, and as many things that are on hold, one of the things we talked about as a board is looking at alternative revenue sources. This is one. I think any decision we make at this point is very, very difficult. One of my personal biggest concerns is our technology and how we continue to advance with technology for our students in our classrooms and our teachers, and that continues to suffer. I'm sure everyone here in the room as well on the dais probably has their own thing that is most important to them that we've already cut. If we're going to look at alternative revenue sources, we need to look at them. Board, any other discussion? By roll call.
Mr. Lang?
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Motion carries 6-1. Board, next on our agenda is the Vacation Station Accounting Administrative Assistant Pay Grade Review Recommendation. I'll entertain a motion to approve the revised 2017-18 Administrative Assistant Salary Schedule as presented.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Ferguson, seconded by Mrs. Lang. Discussion? By roll call?
Mr. Hank?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Moving to strategic planning. I think we have a presentation, is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Cope. Mr. Jeremy Bettler, who's our Director of Facilities and Operations, has some information to share tonight about some great work that we're doing in the Facilities Department. And so it's a little bit about our capital project planning process, and hopefully we'll get to see a little exciting video as well. Jeremy?
Yeah, good evening, Board, Executive Cabinet. So, as Mr. Supple said, here to talk about Facilities Committee and some of the tools that we use to make the decisions we make in bringing recommendations to you guys. So, one of the main things we use is called the Facility Weighted Index. And what the Facility Weighted Index really does is it's a tool that we use to help let's quantify some of our decision making for large capital projects. So, a lot of people have different ideas of where we should be spending money, whether it's a bus garage, an auditorium, HVAC renovations, and at what schools. So we have to figure out a way to remove some of the ways in which you do it and put numbers behind it. So this is the tool we use to do that. It considers educational adequacy, facilities and conditions, safety and health, and building equity. And those are all have different weights put on them that I'll show you in a minute. And that's how we actually start to quantify these numbers. We perform this in small groups, we perform this individually, and then eventually we do it by the entire committee. It eventually spits out data that we can use then to put a ranking on some of our larger capital projects. Should we go to the next slide? So this is actually an example, and it's the bus garage. The bus garage is a great example to use because it's something that's been around for a while. It definitely needs some improvements done to it. But we get asked a lot of times, why haven't we done anything? Or why is it not top on our list? Well, this will explain why. So the score column, the individuals put a 0, 1, 2, or a 3. 3 being the highest, 0 being the lowest. So you can see in this case, the safety and health was scored a 1. So does a new bus garage really affect the safety and health of our students? Indirectly maybe, but I could argue directly no. We're not talking about the buses, we're talking about the actual buildings and parking lots next door. So that was scored low. But you'll see that the weighted factor is a 5, which is the highest weighted factor you can use. Okay? Potential educational impact. Again, it's scored low is a 1. It really doesn't affect student achievement to have a better bus garage. But you will see the weighted factor is high. Okay? The condition of the existing, it's not good. We'll keep it at that. So you can see that it's actually a 3 in this case, meaning we do need to do something with this at some point. The weighted factor being a 4. Life cycle expectancy, efficiency, these are how old the building are. It is how well we're using the structure, and so on and so forth. Again, these move down in the weighted factor scales more in the mid-range at 3 and 3.5. Eventually we move into code requirements, mandating by government authorities, and then the want or desire. So as you can see, you multiply it by the weighted factors and it spits out an actual number. In this case, it was a 40.5, which would rank in the middle to lower echelon of our projects. So you can quickly understand that if you had something, for example, the vestibules in our high schools, which would get ranked a 3 for safety and security, once multiplied by a factor of 5, it drives the number up higher quicker. So this is the weighted factors don't change, just the scored numbers change. So we use this a lot, and it does help us create some data. And this is why, in the instance of the bus garage, it's usually in the mid to lower list of priorities when we bring stuff to the board. Okay, is there any questions about that?
I do. So the weighted factor stays the same?
Yes, that's correct.
When you evaluate your next project, your safety and health is always a 5?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And they've been that way for, I think, 4 or 5 years. The weighted factors have not changed. Yes. Questions?
Who fills out the score sheet?
We do that in different groups. Yeah, we do it by individuals. Then we get them together in groups of maybe teachers and community members, board members, and then we do it as a group. We get the groups different. We try to get differing opinions, and then they all come together in the end, and we put an average on for one specific item, and that's what the score ends up being.
But it's all members of the facilities
Yes.
committee.
Yes.
All members of the facilities committee.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing I want to talk about tonight is our roofing programs. We have a lot of questions about roofs. Roofs do leak. We have flat roofs in our district, and they leak no matter where you are. They're flat. So we've developed a roofing program. We have an individual that's just dedicated now to roofs. That's all he does. And really roofing is as much about communication as it is about repairs. So what we do is we analyze all of our roof conditions, and we look at Google Maps to actually develop pictures of our roofs. We start to begin to show the ages of our roofs, how long they've actually been there. We do monthly inspection reports of every roof in the entire district. That can take 2 weeks to do, to actually get the whole thing done. We look at warranty information. All the roofs have different warranties. We have a lot of different roofs, even on one building, because they've been put in at different time periods. So we have to keep track of all those warranties, which are usually 10 to 15 years. And if it leaks, making sure we hold the manufacturers responsible for the work and that they come out and make the repairs at no cost to the district. And then eventually we keep a repair log, which means every time a roof leak happens, it is documented, it is logged in, and we put a patch number on it so we can keep track of when it leaked, what we've done to fix it, and if someone, like a roof contractor, is actually coming out and doing the work. So there's a lot of work that goes into our roofs. It doesn't mean that we'll ever have all of our leaks taken care of, but this helps communicate with principals, with the public, and it helps us get a visual sense of actually what's going on in our buildings. The next slide will show you an example. This is Francis Howell North, which is hands down one of our buildings that leaks the worst. All the yellow X's are roof leaks in the past 2 years. Okay, so you can get a very good sense of where the leaks are, what roofs are holding up well, and what roofs are not. So we use this tool to communicate with principals as needed, have discussions with Mr. Supple about where we might need to be spending money, and then also taking it to facilities committee. In this case, the red and blue are actually showing roof work that will be done under the roof insurance project currently underway. So this is an added layer that we do use right now. So if we see one of the roofs a leak in the blue, we might not pay as much attention to it right now because we know in December it's to be torn off and actually replaced. So we use these maps, we do track our leaks. It doesn't mean we aren't getting any closer to getting them all resolved, but hopefully we're doing a better job of communicating and getting to the point where everyone understands what's going on and what needs to be done for the long term. Any questions about roof leaks and how we track them in the district?
Jeremy, I do think one thing that's interesting is that the X's indicate where we know water is coming in, but it doesn't necessarily indicate where the leak actually is.
Yes.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
That's correct.
So we know where there's water inside the building. It's underneath that X. But the leak might be someplace else entirely, which is why it takes a long time sometimes to get to the bottom of some of those roof leaks.
Yes, that's great. That's a great point. And I'll add 2 other points to that. We always try to change the ceiling tiles immediately. Having wet ceiling tiles in our buildings is a concern for mold and other things we don't want to have happen. So our number 1 goal is to change the ceiling tiles where the leak has happened. If we do have some moisture in it, that just deals with safety and stuff like that. So that's always one of our priorities. The other challenge with roof leaks is roof leaks comprise to about 60% of leaks. The other stuff is HVAC equipment, brick walls that haven't been necessarily tuck pointed in a long time. So it's not always roofs that create leaks. There's a lot of other things up on our roofs that actually create a lot of problems for us as well. And they're even harder to figure out where they're coming from at times. So. Lastly, there's a roof video. Mr. Dykeman did this work, and I thought it was great and a nice video to share. This refers to our roof insurance project that's currently underway. So. update on that. These are major roof projects. You can tell by the quantity of material on those roofs. These are big construction work going on in our district right now. Currently, Howell back in Francis South Central are the two main roofs going on, and those are what you just saw in the video. So, and we're still estimating completion in about 16 to 18 months.
Just for the record, the communications department did not purchase a drone to shoot that video. That was my personal drone that I used for that, and that was edited, of course, by our own Joe Richter.
Any other questions for me, board? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeremy.
I know you've heard me say this before, but we really are state-of-the-art in the processes that we use to address our facility needs. So when we talk with people in other districts, there is much more subjectivity and a lot less collaboration in making decisions about what facilities are getting updated and how they are prioritizing those facilities projects. So Mr. Bettler and the Facilities Committee, there's a lot of expertise on the Facilities Committee. I was able to attend one meeting this year. They do a fantastic job for our district in providing some objectivity. You see that very low on the weighted list is desire or want, and sometimes that ends up driving projects and driving priorities. And they've done a nice job in helping us to be subjective when we have to make those very difficult decisions about how we spend money on our facilities.
Great presentation. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is a 2016-17 strategic goal update.
The Executive Cabinet will, as we do twice a year, will provide you a very abridged version. I would encourage you to read the full update. I know we're going to talk some about monitoring goals and objectives and data across the district in next week, but twice a year we provide you this opportunity just to give you quick updates on our goals and some of our objectives. We're going to provide you an abridged tonight. We're just going to hit the highlights and then allow you to ask any questions that you might have. So we're going to skip right down to the achievement goals.
Thank you. So for our achievement goal, which is our overarching goal for our APR, so our goal is to earn 98.6% of the annual performance report points, and we won't have that information just yet. That information will be available from DESE in late September is when we'll receive our official APR, which is actually earlier than we received it last school year. And last school year, for the 15-16 school year, we earned 99.3% of the APR. And we typically our goal is for 100 points, but we did do a prediction, and we felt like 98.6 based on our data is where we would be able to top out at for our goal. In attendance, the goals are specific by each target. For high school, middle school, and elementary, those are the 90-90 targets, so it's about the percent of students attending school 90% of the time. Early childhood doesn't collect 90-90 attendance. They do the traditional average daily attendance, ADA, that's what we look at. They're not held at that same 90-90 threshold that the other 3 levels are. So for goal progress, we had significant impact this year with flu and illnesses, and they weren't just those short illnesses, they were long illnesses that kept kids out, and staff members, but kept kids out for 5, 6, 7, 8 days. So we didn't have any of the levels achieve their 90-90 target. Early childhood did meet its target for ADA, but I will say that the data, our data being down was what we saw across St. Charles County. I had checked in with other school districts, and they too are overall, you can see our overall district average was down 1.2%, and that would be pretty standard across St. Charles County. When I talked to the other assistant soups, their districts were down between 1% and 2% because they too were impacted by flu and illnesses throughout the second semester. So this chart here has our historical data. Our behavior goal was reducing incidents that result in an ISS by 3% and incidents that result in OSS by 5%. So our goal progress for our district overall, we ended up with a 6.1% decrease in ISS consequences and an overall 1.5 increase, so fairly flat, increase in behaviors that resulted in out-of-school suspension. So looking at individual school data, a little more than half of our schools were able to achieve their 3% decrease in ISS, and half of our schools achieved a 5% decrease in OSS. And I will say there were a good number of schools that did have a reduction in on-school suspension. It just may have not been enough to make their goal. And then there were some schools that had some increases in OSS. For our climate goal, it's centered around two parts. We do give climate surveys to staff and to parents and to students. So we have two goals. One is centered around our staff climate surveys at the building level, and there are 5 required questions, and we want all schools to have 80% or more of teachers agree or strongly agree on all 5 of those questions. And then we want to look at our parent survey results for the return rate. And so we want them to at least have 30% of their parents responding to the building parent surveys. And so 91% of our schools ended up having the 80% agree or strongly agree on all 5 staff questions. So that was 2 schools that did not. And then all but one of our schools, 96% of our schools, met the threshold for the parent survey participation goal. This next slide gives a summary from the district level, combining all the schools together. The survey results from it's given twice a year, so in the fall and then at the end of the year. And so we have our 15-16 data and our 16-17 data. And so we would then look at, for that the goal setting, we looked at the spring data for 2017. And the bottom question, question 6, you'll notice that's in italics. That was a question that was added this year, so it's a new question. And so we're collecting baseline data on that question for this year since it's new. For our January through June priority work, as you can see, it's all been completed, which was centered around our budget reductions, site visits at our schools, and providing feedback to principals, looking at our data and creating a draft of our 2017-18 CSIP, and then looking at and revising any of the SIP expectations, the school improvement expectations for building principals, and determining how we can support their needs for writing their SIP. And then for our priority work from July through the end of the first semester, certainly in August, all the school improvement plans are due, and they are going through the fine-tooth comb, and feedback is given to principals and to their leadership teams. We will look at our data that comes in, because we'll get math in late July, we'll get our APR data in September, so looking at all the data and making any adjustments as needed within building school improvement plans or within our district CSIP. We hold site visit 1 at the schools typically before the end of first quarter, and we'll give feedback. And then the middle goal there, or the middle priority work, is about providing social-emotional support. So that is centered around what we're doing at the, really in all buildings, but also at the elementary level with the ESCs that were added and the mental health coordinator. And so providing that support based on need throughout 17-18. And we know that we need to keep a close eye on DESE's ESSA plan once it gets finalized and submitted to the U.S. Department of Ed, and see how that plan is going to impact us. And then working collaboratively to plan and develop the CAPS program. So our program here internally, and then also the consortium. And I'll turn it over to Kevin for finance.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
On your climate surveys, are they anonymous?
They are.
Okay. And then the results from the parent surveys or the climate surveys for the staff, do you incorporate those results as part of the improvement plans for the school?
For the student surveys, the schools have to make improvement. Well, we have one of our goals about the lowest question on questions 1 through 4. So the 5th question has to do about bullying, and so that's a separate strategy within our CSIP and the school improvement plans. And then whatever your lowest survey question was on 1 through 4, the schools have to write a strategy and action steps to support improving in that area. And for most schools, it was I like going to the school was the low question, and it was just the lowest of the 4. Not that the numbers were low, but it was the lowest. So yes, they do focus on that. And all of our parent responses, 100% of our schools, our expectation for the parent responses, we want them to be for the questions in the 85% range for strongly agree, and all of our schools had hit that mark without questions. So they don't have any specific goals that they write in terms of the strategies, because they're all hitting it at the high mark. But we want to make sure they have a good return rate for their parent survey.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Supple.
Thank you. The finance goal was to maintain a 15% fund balance at the end of fiscal year 18, and you can see from the numbers there that we are going to be able to exceed that goal. We had a number of projects that we worked on in the January to June, really focused on getting ready for the budget and the health insurance. Those were major projects, and the culmination was this evening with the votes on them. In the coming months, we will be focusing on our transition to the next fiscal year. There's a lot of work involved in getting information ready and into our financial software for use by all of our buildings. And then finally, just preparing for our strategic planning process. There's a lot of data gathering that will be associated with getting our current reality together, and so that'll be a big focus for us on a go-forward basis.
Ready for human resources?
Yes, thank you.
And we had two large goals in the Human Resources Department for the 16-17 school year. The first being that 100% of our principals would respond, agree, or strongly agree in June 2017, saying that our department was able to provide an ample supply of high-quality candidates. As we know that our teachers in our classroom are the #1 driver of student success, and then having all of the quality candidates on our support staff to support those teachers to do that work is important. And you'll see that we did fall short of that goal. By category, those results are there. And this is one of the first years that we have really seen our administrators report that they disagree, that they did not have enough quality candidates to consider. So we're working on some strategies, and we will discuss that a little further in board retreat about some of those pressing issues that we are facing. Our second large goal is that 100% of our principals will agree or strongly agree to questions on the quarterly climate survey, with 75% of responding strongly agree. That is an important goal for us in human resources, as it speaks to the customer service and the support that we provide to our administrators and our staff when it comes to personnel issues and hiring issues. And so we were happy to see that 79% of our principals responded strongly agree, and 100% agree or strongly agree that our department provides them the support and the necessary support and customer service that they need to do their work. Our priority work from January to June has been completed. We did conduct successful negotiations with FHEA and FESPA. We completed the building staffing process and are still completing our certified hiring with about 8 positions left to go. And then we did do a lot of work around our teacher evaluation, as we had asked the board several times to suspend board policy. It was time to really look at that, and we did suggest some changes to the number of evaluations in the teacher evaluation process. Going forward, it will be a priority to continue that high level of support and guidance to our administrators as they do their day-to-day work. We will begin to look at the 2019-20 school calendar as we try to be 2 years out and make sure that we have staff and community review and input in that calendar. We will again start to focus on those dates and that process for negotiations for the next school year. And we will begin to develop our 18-19 staffing plan as we look forward to the next school year.
So this year, we had the inaugural annual district communication survey. It's something that the district had not done on a regular basis previously. We wanted to do it annually going forward so we can generate some linear data about areas where we're getting better, areas where we need to improve. Our second goal was to earn an A or B on efforts of the district to report plans that involve citizens in decision making. And our third goal was to increase participation at our senior panels events. So we had over 1,200 people respond to the first of the communication surveys, so we were very happy with that response. And one of the highlights was that over 90% of our respondents said that the district is good or very good at communicating emergency information. We knew that the 70% goal was rather lofty, and we set the bar high intentionally. We did not reach it in either of those categories. We did have a 30% increase in the number of people that participated in the survey. And both categories, the question is actually a combination of 2 categories, but both efforts to report plans increased and involving citizens increased as well. And our senior PALs participation increased by 72%, so that was certainly a success. But here's a little chart that shows you that while we did not attain the lofty 70% goal, we're trending the right direction in both of those categories and involving our community. Our priority work for January to June was strategic planning, which is still in progress. Our 25 new website templates that have been launched. And it's an example of one of the things we used that communication survey data for. So the 4 icons you see on the homepage of the district website are the top 4 things that parents said that they were looking on the district website. And then we've completed the survey work as mentioned. Coming up for first semester, the strategic planning, and we'll be talking a lot more about these specific details in just a little later in the board meeting, and working to, as a part of that, but generally, to increase community engagement participation in the different events we have. And we know that parents count on our buildings for a lot of the communications and the information that they receive. So we'll be working with our buildings to increase the quality and quantity of building level communications. For 16-17, our governance goals were to institute the MCE, our policy update service, to put their updates in place, as well as to review the 4,000 policies because of the changes in Local 1 Federation and fee split consolidation, and as well as all of the policies that reflected the change in the CFO, COO title. So we did a total of 84 policies and regulations in the past year. And for the next year, according to the predetermined schedule, we have the 1,000 and the 1,000 and 3,000s are on the schedule for the 17-18 for review during the 17-18 school year.
And so in technology, Mr. Wilson, our Director of Technology, has been able to give you a couple of updates recently, so I think you have some pretty good idea, but the technology plan is really the main focus. That's been finalized and presented to the board, so we're very happy about that. A lot of work went into getting ready for what's happening. So the first 6 months of this year, just focusing on getting those resources in place. We know that we need to do some work with our network and continuing to work on our security and getting ready for that testing that took place this spring. So that was the main focus in the first 6 months. And then as we get ready for the school year, our focus, particularly in the early part of the summer, would be to get that new high-speed fiber in and that new WAN connection installed, which will provide a great improvement to connectivity within our buildings and will really deal with that issue around testing and so forth that we've struggled with for the past couple of years. And then because we haven't been able to allocate some resources this year, there is a reboot of our technology program. The board has recently approved, and even tonight approved, some additional purchases related to that. Technology teams have been working very, very hard to get those devices ready for our students when they return, and so that's been really a main focus. And then just finishing up continuing some work on security for our students. We're making some changes there as well. On facilities, we also have a survey question that goes out at the end of the year. We ask our principals whether the buildings and grounds adequately meet the learning needs of our students. We shoot for a 90% agree or strongly agree. This year our response rate was only 82% agree or strongly agree. So we're going to be doing some work around that. Mr. Bethler and I have already had some conversation about things we can do a little bit differently to help engage people. I do think that part of this is just going to be, as we have held off on some of our capital expenditures, and as our buildings get a little bit older, it becomes a little more difficult to meet those needs because our needs are constantly changing, but our resources haven't grown to address all of those needs. Mr. Bettler conducts a climate survey of his custodial maintenance staff, and you can see the results here. Again, we've seen a little bit of a shift. Still, the results are overall very, very positive, but we've seen a little bit of a shift from the more positive categories to the more negative categories. So we're also beginning to strategize how we might help with that. The first part of the year was focused on some very specific tasks. We did a lot of work around safety training this year, and so that was a big improvement for all of our staff. And we're continuing to take a look at our emergency preparedness, and so there was a lot of work done around that as well. On the facility side, getting ready for some of the work that was coming up, so finalizing the committee's report, getting that roofing project ready was a huge undertaking. And so we were able to accomplish that, and then just getting those projects lined up and ready to go for the summer. So as we move into the second half of the year on the safety side of the house, we'll continue to work with our safety committee. We have some additional funds that are going to be allocated, again, to do some safety initiatives, numbering our exterior windows to make it easier for our first responders to identify where individuals might be within a building, and then additional access control points and cameras, which will again improve the physical security of our buildings. On the facility side, just working with the projects that have been identified so far. Of course, the main project is going to be that major roofing. That'll be ongoing for a while, but there's some other work that needs to be done as well. And then just the projects related to overall planning for our strategic work, and so that committee coming together, taking a look at the major significant projects that need to be completed within the district. So that'll be a focus on the facilities side.
So I'll read everything on that slide to you. I just want to kind of summarize the themes for our challenges. The board knows that I have had concerns and will continue to have concerns about our academics and being able to maintain our high level of achievement given the resources and the supports that have been pulled from the classroom. So that is something that you should be familiar with as a challenge. Our finances are a concern. You know from looking at Kevin's projections that we cannot sustain long-term what we currently have, and we are going to have to make some changes and either increase our revenue or continue to make dramatic cuts moving forward. A couple things that I have learned in the past month that have become more clear to me, past months, not the past month, that have become clear to me that will be future challenges. It's just shortages in human resources in specific areas, and then thinking even more long-term teacher shortages as well. And so we have some immediate needs that we're going to be talking more with you about in some specific areas, but then thinking more long-term, we will be anticipating some teacher shortages as they move nationwide to the country. We do have aging facilities. That's a concern that we are going to have to begin to develop a plan to address. As has been mentioned several times tonight, some of our buildings are very old and we can't continue to just put Band-Aids and throw good money after bad. We're going to have to come up with some plans to address those issues. And then I know that we've had a lot of conversation with the board and as the superintendent about the need to communicate and over-communicate with the large community that we have, helping people to understand and have clarity around the things that go on in the district. Every issue that we talk about tonight needs to have clarity out in the community. And my first year as superintendent, I can tell you that things get misinterpreted and there is misinformation out there, and we need to continue to communicate and over-communicate as that game of telephone gets played through many people in our community. And then just continuing to work on that community engagement piece and getting people who are directly involved or indirectly involved in our schools and in our community involved in our district. So those are kind of our future challenges as I see them moving forward.
Board, any questions?
Kevin, mine's nonsensical. Numbers on the windows. You should be able to read the number from the outside, correct?
That's correct.
Some of our buildings are backwards. Close to my house.
That's why it's on the priority list.
Oops.
We'll get it figured out.
No finger pointing from the back. Nope.
I think that was a really great summary for a lot of information about what's going on in our district, so thank you for that. All right, we are to superintendent comments.
No, I went
No,
around.
okay, skip one. No, you're right.
There's a lot of strategic planning and strategic planning.
So sorry, we have more. So next on the agenda is actually the policies. So we have a first reading board. Please take a look at the policies that are currently out there for the first read. Then item D is strategic planning process. And is that going to Mr. Dykeman?
I'm going to take it.
Okay.
So I wanted to take an opportunity just to share the strategic planning process as it has become more clear to us about what the steps will be moving forward. And so the first slide, so the first slide really shows the timeline of each of the different steps, and I'm going to talk through the steps, but you can see that we actually kind of in an official way kicked off strategic planning on August 24th, and we intend to finalize, the plan will be brought to the board, but the details of the plan, such as action steps and strategies, will be finalized in the January to February timeline. Wanted to point out that throughout the steps there are going to be plenty of opportunities. I know that has been a concern expressed for our community to be involved in the process. So we will be having community engagement meetings in late September and early October. One of the changes that we've recently made was to increase that number from 2 to 3. So when Mr. Dykeman and I met with CEC, one of the thoughts that we had on our end was that having one at each high school to allow the feeder patterns and to make things convenient to the neighborhoods would be something that was important to us. So we added that community engagement meeting. In addition, after each product, and I'm going to explain those in a minute, there will be a survey that will go out to the community. So for example, when the Strategic Planning Committee develops a future statement about kind of our mission and vision, that will go out to the community for a survey and input, and that input will be brought back to the Strategic Planning Group for considerations and tweaks and changes. So there'll be community engagement meetings, there'll be 3 surveys. People who can't make the community engagement meetings will be provided a survey, and then 2 additional community surveys throughout the process. In addition, at every point that there is an artifact, such as that mission vision statement or the draft of the plan, we intend to bring those drafts out to all of our committees as much as we can in our short time frames and seek input on those. So alongside of those surveys going out, for example, academic strategic planning, the board, we will have opportunity to share where we're at with you and seek your input on that and bring that back to the Strategic Planning Committee as well. That is part of the Strategic Planning Group's responsibility, is to share those artifacts and to be seeking input and bringing those back to the group. We have established our core plan team. As you'll recall, the roles are the suggestion of the CEC group that is facilitating the strategic planning. This group has met one time. That was the August 24th meeting. Get more into that in a minute. So we have started that first bucket, if you will, the readiness part, with 2 steps. I'm going to talk about each of those. One was an orientation. This was for the core team. This is when we went into more detail about each step of the process. We reviewed our roles and responsibilities as a core team and looked at what we were committing ourselves to over the next few months, several months. In addition to the core team, there is going to be a much larger strategic plan team, and this is the breakdown. We've talked about this in the past. We became more clear about the exact numbers and how they might fall out as part of the core team meeting. So you can see that there will be 17 administrators, including 5 cabinet members, 12 building administrators, 17 community and parent members. There will be 17 staff and 9 to 10 students. One of the goals was that we had tables, 10 tables of 6 was kind of one of the goals. And the core team members that we talked about previously are included in this number. So when you're looking at 5 cabinet members, I'm on the core team. I'm also on the strategic plan team. I'm one of those 5. It's not in addition to. Our next big step will be a data retreat. So the strategic plan team will look over environmental scan, which will include lots and lots of data on some of the survey data that we talked about tonight. So we're incorporating data that we have historically, our district data, and they will look at our district's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats as a group. That will lead us to those community engagement meetings. We will have 3 different community engagement meetings on each one of those nights. We will have student focus groups going on during the day. We'll have a staff community engagement meeting immediately after work, so that 3:30 to 4:30 time frame. And then the evening is when we'll have our community members in. October 23rd will be the vision retreat. I was very excited to hear from CEC about their thoughts on what a vision retreat should be. So we're accustomed to wordsmithing a mission and vision, and their vision retreat is very different. So they will have our strategic planning team looking at some models of greatness and some cutting edge, some best practices, and really envisioning what our district could be. Some of the things that I believe would be visions that I would have for our district were included in the materials that they brought to us. So I was very excited about the thought that we're not going to spend an entire day wordsmithing our mission and our vision. So November 15th, we will actually begin to draft the strategic plan and our long-range goals. Again, community surveys going out in between each of these major day planning events for the strategic planning group, gathering feedback. The 15th is when we anticipate refining and looking at the recommendations, gathering all the feedback, and finalizing that strategic plan. 10, right now, our plan is to bring to you the plan on January 4th. The strategic planning team would be invited to that meeting as well. We'll be getting to the details of the plan, so the minute action steps, kind of some of that more annual stuff in the January to February, but that kind of goes in after the plan. So the big ideas in the plan and the action steps come after that. And we'll be working on living the plan, and I know that we have talked a lot about, and we do live our plan. So really talking about what it will look like annually. We'll need to restructure our strategic planning committees to align to the new strategic plan. How will we roll out the plan given the new priority areas that have been identified? So with that, any questions that you all have about what this process is going to look like? I did have an ask. Can we go back to PowerPoint? I have an ask. So one of the things that CEC identifies for us, which has been nice, is who determines the members. And we, right now, need 2 additional community members, and that is identified by the Board of Education. And 1 additional board member, which is identified by the Board of Education.
So we need 3 names.
You need 3 names, 1 of you and 2 additional community members.
One of the names is on the plaque up there.
Or is this when we just throw out a name?
The board can determine how they want to handle that. So that is an option if anybody would like to. I would give a good look on the dates, because we do believe it's very important that you attend every day. That's what we've told all the other members. Their meetings do not build on each other, or they do build on each other. They're not standalone meetings, so you will have had to have been at the last meeting to make sense of the next meeting.
And so
I'll put those back up here.
Dr. Hendricks-Harris, could you maybe explain a little bit of what is considered a community member? So I see parents are on there, and community member is different.
So we'd like to identify somebody who's not a parent. We know that's a segment, a demographic that our district's always trying to connect with. So somebody who has no kid in the district, somebody who's not an employee, somebody who's just a resident of the Francis Howell School District.
Could be business, could be public servant, could be anything, and any of those.
So this would just be a recommendation?
We would still have to see if they would be willing. You might want to give us more than 2 names, so that we could pursue those folks and see if they're interested.
So my recommendation is that the board take some time, think about community members that they know in the community, and they can be a community servant or an employee within the district, but not a resident.
We would say not an employee of the district.
I'm sorry, let me clarify.
But a resident.
Chief of police, someone doesn't live in the district but serves our community.
Sure.
Are they, I believe they're applicable as a community member, even though they don't reside in the district. So it can be someone that resides in the district with no attachment to the district, or a person that is providing a service within our community.
Yep. Business people, it's open.
And then along with that, if you as a board member are interested in being on the committee, if you could let Dr. Hendricks Harris know. And then if there's more than one, we'll do a name poll. So,
A board raffle.
a board raffle.
Yes, board
Using the
raffle.
raffle prize.
With strategic planning meetings being your prize.
Does that sound like a path forward that everyone's comfortable with?
Throwing it out now.
Is that good? Okay, and if you could have those to Dr. Hendricks Harris by next Thursday, is that soon enough? 1 week?
If you all want to do your raffle at retreat, we certainly can.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, we can do the real raffle at retreat. Fair enough.
And again, those 4 dates are critical are the ones indicated: August 24th, September 19th, October 23rd, November 15th, and December 15th.
Are these morning, afternoon, or evening meetings?
Most of them are full day meetings. I think we have one evening in there, and it
I
is,
believe the 24th is the evening one, if it ones are day.
The others are, the first one is runs into the evening, but the other 4 are,
all day.
yeah.
We'll be happy to send you the email with the times tomorrow.
That would be very helpful, so we can kind of,
He said 4 meetings. Yeah. but
and then we'll have our board raffle and our retreat. Board, any questions on the strategic plan?
Our retreat is at Spencer Road Library. I was going to the Tantera, but no.
It's on the second floor.
We have some financial issues here.
Any other questions right now about the planning process for our strategic plan? Good, okay, thank you very much. Now, superintendent comments.
And we have a few. First, I want to thank the board for your participation in graduation. I want to let you know that I've received many positive comments about your participation in graduation and your speeches especially. That was some of the highlights. I had heard from several people that it was the best board speech ever, so I just want to give you those kudos. And I also want to thank the principals, administrative assistants. There are many details that went into those graduations, and they're primarily responsible for all of that. It is a very large event. Many of you have participated in planning of weddings, and this is a much bigger event with many more details than that, so I want to thank them. Summer's officially started. We have an article on our website right now about what happens in Francis Howell over the summer. It's something you might be interested in looking at. I wanted to highlight a couple things. We have over 2,000 of our students taking part in our summer programs. We also kicked off our STEM and STEAM camps. I understand that they are going very well. We have over 100 students in each of those right now. We have over 1,500 students participating in our vacation station program this summer. 8 members of our ground crew throughout the summer are regularly cutting about 900 acres of grass across our district. This board room's been full of staff receiving professional development. We've had a lot of orientation of new subs for next school year and many planning meetings for 17-18. This past week, we also brought all of our administrators in for 2 of their 4 days of summer training. One of the highlights was a poverty simulation that was supported by the Northeast Community Action Corporation. So our administrators left with a better understanding of the lives of some of our students. So that was an important highlight of that training for them. Finally, this past week, the superintendents and assistant superintendents in St. Charles met to detail further the plans for the CAPS program. A steering committee is being formed, and we'll meet again in July. We're getting great participation from our area businesses, and we'll keep you posted on that.
Thank you very much. Okay, board, we have upcoming meetings. Our We do have our retreat coming up next week, but on this agenda, we have our July 20th meeting. You'll take a look and see if anything needs to be added or adjusted. Ms. Ferguson?
Yes, I will not be at the July 20th meeting. I will be up in the Sierras. I have a friend who passed away and we're spreading ashes up there. We'll be hiking 50 miles.
Any additions to the agenda? Any changes? Okay.
Then I couldn't call in.
Yes, I understand. Thank you very much. All right, next meeting then is the August 17th meeting. Any adjustments there? With that, board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
Second. Third. Fourth. Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mrs. Ferguson. By roll call.
Ms. Lang?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.